Early Breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio.
Well, Shabana Mahmood is on the front page of many of the papers. The Guardian says, though, Starmer faces a Labour revolt over the hardline asylum plans. The Times has families facing deportation in this asylum law shake-up. They've also got that survey that nearly half of all voters want Starmer out by the next election. Well, the front page of the Mirror has a quote from the Prime Minister: "I'll lead Labour at the next election." The Prime Minister sort of really fighting back amidst this torrid speculation and threats to his position. And there's also a story on the front page of The Guardian saying reselling tickets for profit is going to be outlawed under plans to be announced this week by the government. This is a crackdown on ticket touts and also resale platforms so that they can't resell a ticket, significantly higher than the original face value. Here to go through the papers with me is Andrew Eborn, the barrister, broadcaster, president of Octopus TV. Andrew, the Prime Minister says, front page of the Mirror, "I'll lead Labour at the next election." It's never great when you have to declare that when you're currently the Prime Minister.
It's certainly not. And as you say, nearly half of Labour voters want him out. They want him to step down. It is extraordinary looking at that sort of basis. There was a YouGov survey of 2,100 people, and that found that 23% of Labour voters think Starmer should quit now and allow the party to elect a new leader. It all sounds like the sort of Tories turmoil, doesn't it? And as one of your brilliant listeners said, it's rather like listening to football managers and they're in, they're out. But certainly it's not a good day for Starmer as he wakes up to this news.
Yeah. Do you think the public have lost patience, that they want to see immediate results from politicians that they elect?
I think we always go in a cycle, don't we? We go in, and I was looking at this around the world. Whenever we had sort of miserable times, you say, well, here's the next hope. They come in with somebody newly elected. Everybody thinks that they're going to be the saviour and get all our sort of turmoil and troubles sorted. And then they go through this sort of popularity for a very brief moment. And then when they don't deliver, then people turn on them. So this pattern is followed around the world. I always say history repeats itself because we don't learn the lessons from history. And learning those lessons means that we should look at why are these failures when people backtrack on promises that are made in manifestos and so on and so forth, and we've had that sort of stuff. Confidence is lost. And I always say, look, trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback, and trust in politicians is at an all-time low when they fail to deliver.
Do you think it's fair that Keir Starmer is sort of polling so unfavourably? Do you think he deserves that?
Well, I think polling is interesting, isn't it? I'm not sure polling's fair or otherwise. It's just a test of popularity. And and it also depends. It's like always these things, these market researchers, how do they ask the questions when they do these sort of pollings?
I think this was a simple one.
Do you hate Keir Starmer? Do you hate him a lot, or do you hate him more than anybody I've hated ever? So it all looks at those sort of questions. So questions are key for that sort of stuff. If I think it's fair, he's been a certain number of months in the job. There are lots of people nibbling at his heels, as there always are in politics. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next few days.
Well, and I think the next 6 months really is the critical time period. This is really interesting about ticket sales. Front page of The Guardian, lots of the papers talking about this today, to say ministers have been considering allowing touts to sell on a ticket for up to 30% above the original face value as part of the consultation process. However, now the decision's been made by ministers to say if you resell a ticket, you cannot sell it for anything more than the price you originally paid for it. Is this sort of a victory for common sense?
Well, it is and it's a victory for consumers. It's a victory for music fans and others around the world. It's something which I'm very close to the music industry. As you know, we do a lot with major events. And you look at some of the eye-watering figures. An Oasis ticket, for example, at the Wembley Stadium shows, they were listed for as much as £3,498 on StubHub and £4,442 on Viagogo. Coldplay at Wembley is like £814.52 on StubHub. And the most extreme example they had was a ticket for All Points East Festival in London's Victoria Park, which was headlined by the brilliant Ray, and that was listed for £114,666 on Viagogo. The key is that the artists themselves, the people doing all the bookings and so on and so forth, are not receiving that money. The ticket touts are out, and it's quite right too that it's the consumer and the artist concerned and all those in the very, very brilliant music industry trying to rebuild themselves after tough times. They're the ones who should be benefiting.
You mentioned Ray. I'm sort of newly obsessed with Ray. I feel I'm late to the party. I think she did a performance at Ronnie Scott's that ran until 3 o'clock in the morning, which sounded absolutely amazing. Inside,
would you have paid £114,666 on Viagogo to go and see her? Though?
No. No, I would not. I would have watched the highlights elsewhere or listened to her on Spotify instead. Talking about spending money, council tax. The Times is reporting where a mansion tax could push council tax bills over £6,000. What's happening, Andrew?
Oh, it is extraordinary. And they keep looking at this, don't they? Tax the rich and work on that sort of basis. So, and I was looking at the bands that I'm in, and it's a bit alarming when they're talking about this sort of stuff. They were talking about mansion taxes for the last few weeks. They were going to basically charge a percentage of the value of a home and revitalising and revamping, if you like, stamp duty. They're now talking about this is going to push, potentially, it's everything's potential, council tax bills over £6,000. And basically what they're saying is, obviously, Rachel Reeves has got a budget coming up. She's previously promised not to increase tax on the ordinary working folk. So maybe this is another way of doing it. And there are about 310,000 homes which are worth 1.5 million or more could be hit with a council tax surcharge. And she's looking to raise billions of pounds in the November budget on the 26th. The Treasury is said to be considering a revaluation of the 2.4 million homes in the most expensive council tax bands in England, and then increasing rates of about 300,000 of those most expensive properties. And they anticipate that would raise 600 million a year. As with always with these sort of policies, what they tend to do is they tend to sort of put it out there, see what the sort of public reaction is, and then see if that's something they should go for. So the public reaction here is, don't do it. It's terrible to sort of penalise people on that sort of basis. People are suffering enough, but putting up council taxes to £6,000 would be lunacy.
Well, with council tax, the bans haven't been changed, I think, in about 30 years. And the admin process to kind of reevaluate all of these homes is going to be, not insignificant. However, Andrew, they've got to find the money from somewhere. Can you imagine, of all the rumours we've had so far about whether that's, a wealth tax, a mansion tax, what would be fair, do you think?
Well, it is interesting, and you're right. It was 1991 valuations haven't really kept up with the increase in house prices. I think what's fair is you spread the pain, if you like. People realise that in order to pay for services, you've got to get it from somewhere. But if you're just putting it onto the rich and so on and so forth, and what happens in London, just to put it in perspective, so many people are property rich and cash poor, and that tends to be the way the house prices in London have shot up, with people when they originally bought them in far more reasonable. Now, lots of people, you'll be surprised what sort of fairly basic homes would still fit within the 1.5 million value if you put it on the market. So we need to look at a sort of a wider way of doing it. We also need to encourage people to get out and work.
That would be income tax, wouldn't it be? 2 pence on income tax. And it looks as though, the Financial Times had this exclusive, that the government are not going to do that, having sort of very much laid the groundwork to do so. Well, we've got just over a week left of speculation, and there was some extremely firm words in the Commons yesterday about not leaking the degree to which we have had the idea of stories about what might be in the budget. A week to go, and then we'll have more details. Talking of housing, what about this if this was your neighbour? This is a total nightmare for this individual. They can't sell their home. You might not have that much sympathy for them because I think they live in a huge house in Chelsea and probably will be in that band of people who've got to pay that £6,000 council tax. But there is several houses that can't sell their properties because a neighbour has refused to deal with Japanese knotweed. And it is such an infestation that property's fallen into disrepair, and you've got foxes living inside it. And there's not very much you can do if your neighbour flat out refuses to fix it.
Well, it is extraordinary that this particular person was prosecuted for failing to maintain a plot in 2017, but his neighbours say he has since not met the conditions to manage the Japanese knotweed. You're right about putting it in the ban. It's worked out that the neighbourhood, a terraced house, sold for 3.7 million 2 years ago. But basically, the neighbour has let this go derelict, and not just the knotweed, but also, as you say, foxes. These urban foxes are living there as well. And there are also water leaks and so on and so forth. Neighbour disputes are some of the worst you can ever get. It's horrible because you can't escape. This sort of stuff where it's devaluing your property because people have not followed their sort of society obligations as well as sort of legal obligations to maintain it are absolutely awful. But basically what they've said, the person has been prosecuted beforehand for not sorting out this particular Japanese knotweed. There is a knock-on effect for neighbours as well. Obviously, you're looking at that sort of side. So I think it is important whenever you get these neighbour disputes just to think about not just the financial impact, but also the impact on people's mental health and so on and so forth. Waking up every day knowing that you've got a dispute with your neighbour is horrendous for people.
Yeah, I'm sure. And well, also it's had a big impact probably on the value of their home. First of all, if they can't sell it, and if whoever buys it's got to navigate not only the difficult neighbour, but the knotweed as well.
And the foxes.
And the foxes. There's a Frenchman who found good fortune, though, when he was renovating his own house. I did enjoy this story. He dug up his garden. This is actually not far from where I used to live. It's in a suburb of Lyon. Dug up his garden for a swimming pool, and having lived there, it is the perfect climate to have a swimming pool in the garden. And then discovered gold carefully wrapped in plastic, buried in the garden, estimated to be worth €700,000. And you might think, ka-ching, payday, this will more than certainly pay for the swimming pool and probably something else. But there's a problem. Tell us.
Well, it also pays for the council tax as well, wouldn't it? The Frenchman's faithful find of fabulous fortune flops. Basically what's happened, as you rightly say, €700,000 they estimate these gold bars were due to be worth. What's going to happen, however, is under French law, it really belongs to whoever owned the estate and whoever may have buried it there beforehand. An only child would normally be entitled to half the estate. Two children would entitle 2/3 and so on and so forth. And what's worse, however, if there's no heirs, then it goes to the estate. It goes to the state, rather. So the government would basically get all of that sort of side accordingly. There is precedent for this because apparently a couple found gold bars worth nearly €800,000 in their garden in central France. They were ordered by a court in 2018 to hand them over to the heirs of the original owner. So there's going to be a lot of people claiming that they are the heirs to the owner. It's going to be very interesting on that sort of basis. I think as a lawyer, I give people a tip that they should put this into their contract of sale, that anything which is discovered on the property as well, here we are, well, we'll split the bonuses on this, but anything discovered on the property also goes with the title, because if you try and do this from a legal point of view, I think that would be an interesting way of sort of challenging it. But certainly, under French law, a person who's very honest and found this gold and confessed to finding it, they probably have to hand it over, and they may not get rewarded for their honesty.
Yes, he won't, or she. Oh, gosh, yeah, because in France, actually, you can't by law disinherit your children.
Yes.
So that means the gold bars will then go to the children of the previous owner. Well, yes, I always encourage honesty, absolutely, but I think that man may be regretting being quite so frank about his finds. Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Eborn, the barrister and broadcaster, going through the papers with us this morning.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
With Rosie Wright on Times Radio.
Time for the sports news with Hugo Chambray. Hugo, good morning.
Morning, Rosie.
Now, in the football tonight, there are some pretty huge games for Wales and for Scotland. They are trying to do as England already have done and qualify for the World Cup. What's going to happen?
Yeah, so this is after Northern Ireland won against Luxembourg last night. They won 1-0 and they've secured themselves a playoff spot. So it means they are not quite at the World Cup yet, but they are into a process